Mrs. Cox, ladies and gentlemen, we are here to express the heartfelt thanks of our member florists for the part we have been allowed to play in making Christmas such a joyous occasion at the White House. At the same time, the foliage and flowers used in decorating for this festive season serve a very purpose in expressing the good feelings all Americans have for the First Family and this house. In assisting your consultants and staff, our florist volunteers gave their very best effort to make it a truly beautiful house. We hope that the warm and colorful decorations of seasons past have added to the enjoyment of the thousands of visitors who come here at Christmas. To thank you for allowing us to have a part in Christmas at the White House, we have prepared this photographic remembrance of such a Christmas. It is an album entitled Christmas Flowers at the White House, 1971. We hope you will enjoy having it with the warm good wishes of FT members everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. What a beautiful reminder of Christmas at the White House and of all the wonderful efforts of the florists who volunteered their time to make Christmas at the White House even more beautiful than at other times of the year. Thank you. It's lovely. We should really...
Beautiful.
Can you drop the book a little bit, please? That's it. Yes. Santa, can you drop the book a little bit, please?
They want the book to go down just a little bit.
And I see you.
Yeah.
Yes. Just lovely.
Oh,
Oh,
that's all right.
that really brings back beautiful memories.
Sure
Not that
does.
you could get a sight like that, but it's lovely.
Move back a little bit.
Yeah.
You'd love to. No, don't touch it. I want to get some.
Mr. Hofer, perhaps you might like to say a few words about the Christmas tree.
What is it?
Here we go.
Am I ready?
You're ready.
Oh, sure.
You get right in there.
Maybe you could...
All right. Mrs. Cox, this noble fir tree comes from the slopes of Mount St. Helens in the evergreen state of Washington. This tree is popular on the West Coast as a Christmas tree because the whorls are prominent and the color's so green. I present it to you humbly and with love. Humbly because so many worthy growers compete for this honor of presentation. Lovingly because we in the J. Hofert Company have had the opportunity to grow in this business and in our land of freedom. Merry Christmas, Mrs. Nixon and Mrs. Cox, and to your family.
Thank you. This morning, I was reading about Christmas trees, and I discovered that the first Christmas tree was thought of in the 8th century. And since the 8th century, 12 centuries ago, we've come a long way. For example, I don't think that anyone in the 8th century would have dreamed of seeing the glorious sight that we saw last night with the launching of Apollo 17 to the moon. But some things haven't really changed that much, and one of those things is the Christmas tree. And that is why we are delighted to have this handsome, beautiful tree from the state of Washington. I know it will grace the White House and bring a great deal of pleasure to all the people who visit the White House at Christmas, including people from all over the United States, the world, and even from the North Pole.
May I, Ms. Cox, just say that when you look at the tree during Christmas and Christmas week, I hope that you will be looking in the background to note the great slopes of Mount St. Helens, one of the great glacier peaks in the Pacific Northwest. So it's real Christmassy, and it's a tribute to the conservation program, tree farming as we call it, in the Northwest, which has been so successful, and Mr. Hofert has been one of the pioneers in growing trees, and this is a product of that effort, and we're very proud that the state of Washington is represented through Mr. Holford here for this special Christmas year.
Hi. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the White House for this tour of the decorations in 1972. It seems that I've seen you before every year, and it's always a pleasure, I must say. This year, it was truly a team effort between White House staff and our wonderful volunteers who come in to help us on many, many occasions. A great credit goes to all who have created this house and background of eloquence, beauty, and grace. I want to especially pay tribute to Lucy Winchester, who worked with our consultant, Mr. Pennock of Pennsylvania. He also is a volunteer. And then Rex Scouten with his superior staff. They work around the clock. You should have seen them in here even last night getting ready for today. Then we have Mr. Bender, the cook, who baked that beautiful gingerbread house. Mr. Williams, who provided the greens. And Rusty Young, you all know, he's been here many, many years. And he's the one who really does enthuse these volunteers who come in to help him. As you know, it's been a long tradition to celebrate Christmas here at the White House. It first began with President James John Adams, excuse me. I've been talking about rooms, and we've done the Madison here and this, that. But anyway, during those days, the house was not quite completed, and he moved in just a month before Christmas. But they were determined to celebrate anyway. And they planned two parties, one for adults and one for the young children, to have a good time with a granddaughter, Susanna, who was only 4. 20 cords of wood were burned to heat the house and to dry the plaster. But according to reports, adults stood around shivering and left far too early. The children did much better because they romped through the rooms and played games and had a glorious time. Each succeeding White House family has entertained according to their own wishes and events of the time. We have found a great deal of pleasure in sharing this house with others during the Christmas season and at all times of the year. In fact, just 2 years ago, we inaugurated the tours in the evening for the public, and those who wish may come and bring their children. This is one time when working folks have a chance to bring the children to the White House, and we're so delighted that many will be coming this year from this area and from across the nation. We hope all who come here will enjoy the color, the joy, and the meaning of Christmas. And now we can go around and see all the little surprises we have for you. How many of you can bake like this? It's all good. It tastes as great as it looks.
This year it's an A-frame, isn't it? It's an A-frame house this year?
Yes, yes. Great, thanks.
Gentlemen, we'll try one shot in the hallway with a long shot perspective if you want to gather in the doorway.
guess so.
All right, gentlemen.
Could she walk down the hall?
Julie Nixon Eisenhower is our special guest today, and I must say, first of all, you're much prettier than your pictures. Do people always tell you that?
Sometimes, thank you. They also say that I don't look like my picture, so I don't know how I'm supposed to interpret that. So.
Oh, but you're very lovely, I think. And I know that my viewers are very excited about your being here with us. And we're excited about having, North Carolina's excited about having a part in the White House Christmas, too.
Yes, the tree is just beautiful. I did happen to see it on Wednesday when it arrived, the one for the White House itself. And I know that my mother's been, well, they start working 9 months in advance on decorations, and the house will be just beautiful again this year. One thing that they do at the White House, an idea that my mother had, is to create poinsettia trees. You make a Christmas tree shape from masses of poinsettia plants, and you get special stands built, and then you have a beautiful red poinsettia tree. And they're put in the East Room, one under the George Washington portrait and one under the Martha Washington. And I'm sure, and then there are boughs on the stairways coming down the grand hallway, and just the house will be beautiful.
Do you have any special events scheduled for that day? Just going to be a close family reunion?
For Christmas Day itself, I think that just the Coxes and the Eisenhowers and the Nixons will all be together for a family reunion, which should be fun. I know last year that when Mamie Eisenhower was with us for Christmas, we celebrated in the Red Room. And this year it's newly decorated, and also the Green Room will be open and newly decorated, so perhaps we'll eat in the Green Room as a special treat. They can move in a table, you see.
Oh, I wish I could be there.
I know, it is fun.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Wife and Christian way of life.
Thank you, Mrs. Nixon, for being here. Mr. President, on behalf of the American people, I would like to ask you to do us the honor of lighting the National Community Christmas tree.
Now I would like to suggest that this honor should be shared, and who better to share it with but young Americans. And so if Tina and Warren would join me here, we'll press this button together and light the tree. There we got it.
Good afternoon, and welcome you to the preview of the White House Christmas 1973. This is the 5th time I've been before you, and I can tell you it's always just a great pleasure to show the house decorated by all our wonderful volunteers, by our staff, and by our good friend, Mr. Pennock, who comes up with all these great ideas. For example, he knew that this year we had the new furniture in the hall, which once belonged to President Monroe. So he said, let's have the Monroe Christmas. And here we have the vermeil, which was also introduced by Monroe, and the use of greens, which was very popular in that day. Through this doorway, you can see the beautiful fir tree from the state of North Carolina. This is decorated like it has been for the past 5 years as a tribute to the states, with the ornaments from each one, including the state flower and the gem of the state. In addition to that, we had a omen, or a little sign of very good luck, because in the branches of the tree was a nest where a bird, I imagine, had some little ones last year. It didn't look more than 1 year old, but anyway, we have kept it so that the children coming through the White House could see it. And in the nest, we put a bird apiece to celebrate the fact that this is the first Christmas in 12 years that we are at peace with all nations in the world. Our servicemen who were in Vietnam and our former prisoners of war are home, and we can all be grateful for that. Then as you go into the East Room, we have the favorite banks of poinsettias around the creche, which is 18th century Italian. This was a gift to the White House during the Johnson administration. If you will notice the figures in the creche, each one is a work of art, hand-carved and beautiful. Then in the dining room, we have our usual greens and the holly mass, and our chef each year makes a gingerbread house, which folks of all ages enjoy. This year, he put 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue on it, and a little peppermint tree. So it is a little different, but it's always also a work of art. I do want to thank Mr. Pennock again, the wonderful White House staff, many of which are standing right over here. Where's Mr. Pennock? Because I'd like you to see this creative genius. He may have gone home to Philadelphia, but anyway, with him goes our deepest thanks. And then I do want to say that all these volunteers who came were so great. They paid their own expenses from as far as Oregon and California, and they had the pleasure of decorating the people's house for the enjoyment of the people of this land. Many will see pictures, they'll see television, and thousands will visit here, because once again we're going to have the candlelight tours at night for different groups. For example, Tuesday night we have the senior citizens. Later in the week we'll have staff members, members of Congress, and then it'll be open to the public as well, so that people can come and bring their families in the evenings as well as in the mornings. Now here's this man of genius, Mr. Pennock. And also, I have to tell you something. The other day, my daughter called from New York, and she'd gone into a shop up there, and this gentleman was telling her that the most beautiful flowers he ever saw in his whole life were those at her wedding. So here you are. Thank you so much. Do you want to say a word about some of the other?
Well, just creating things for the first family here in the White House in Washington, to me, is one of the most thrilling experiences that any man could ever have. And I consider myself honored to be chosen by the Nixon family to do all the important things which I've done for them.